You're inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running African. All right, so we've been running about 13 to 15 minutes behind time all morning. And we're going to our next guest who has joined me in the studio. He has come all the way from Portland. This brother has been on the battlefield for a very long time. Never get weary yet. You know, last Saturday, we were in Portland at the Blue Lagoon, and this brother was part of the protest there. We have been following him on the social media for a good while. Very, very impressed with a lot of his ideas and a lot of the things that he said, and has been commenting on the social media. Over time, we had a conversation there, and it's led to right here, where we're sitting now. So I'm very happy to welcome my next guest in the studio. So his name is Alex Moore-Minott. You might know him. A true-born Windward Maroon. He has a BSc with honors in international relations from the University of the West Indies. He's first and foremost an agriculturist, known for his work with the University of the West Indies concerning the grassroots cultivation of cannabis, especially as it concerns the benefits to young Jamaicans. And he's a cultural activist, a Maroon rights activist, and former Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Accompong Maroons at Champong. Oral historian, dancer and herbalist of the renowned Granny Nanny Cultural Group. You'll hear me play that CD on this program a lot. And in 2018, successfully led an effort to secure the repatriation of cultural material from the Smithsonian. He is a leader of the internationally accredited West Indian Tribal Society, which has observer status for the World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, Intergovernmental Committee on Intellectual Property and Genetic Resources, Traditional Knowledge and Folklore. Alex was the apprentice and student of the great Maroon leader, the late Major Charles Aarons. He's an Indigenous representative for the Portland Environment Action and a tireless advocate for the land and water rights of Maroons and other native Jamaican people. Very happy to welcome Alex to the studio. Greetings, my brother. How are you doing?
Fantastic to be here. You know, it's really crazy how quiet it is outside. And yeah, because, you know, this is a program with so much pull, and you expect so much activity, and then when you come here, it's so tranquil. You know.
Well, it's a conundrum, isn't it?
Indeed.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have you in the studio.
Thank you.
I'm going to start where we saw each other last time, you know, which was in Portland, and persons might have seen you on the news too, because you made a very powerful statement. You brought something to people's attention that tends to get lost when we're talking about issues regarding access to the beach, access to the land, and so on, and where we're saying that NEPA has some responsibility. One of the things you did was to brought to the center that when you talk about agencies like NEPA, for example, you're talking about agencies that reside within the office of the Prime Minister.
No, that's correct.
Why is this significant?
Well, I mean, we have a term, we call it the mega ministry, right? And it's this all-encompassing concept that the Prime Minister currently has, where all of these extremely pivotal ministries, pivotal departments are under his control. And, you know, we must wonder, you know, what's the motive behind it, and what does it all mean? Does it mean that, you know, he has ultimate say? You know, the what is the level of, you know, watchdog activity that can take place if one man has everything under his chair? You know, so it's concerning.
We're talking about some super ministries, literally, though, at the end of the day, that he has under his portfolio. Because
land is everything.
Land is freedom. Land is liberty.
Land is everything.
Yes.
Land is everything.
So that and explain to us when you say land is everything. and that falling under the Prime Minister. And at the same time, we have the situation where now we're talking about access to land, a denial of access to land. What is that saying about the Prime Minister himself?
Well, definitely, I don't want to be disparaging in any kind of way, but what I'm thinking is that there should be more words from him. There should be more conversation that he's involved in. I'm thinking that a man of his stature, with such an issue like this, he should have come out and said something already. We had no idea that the protest was going to be of that magnitude. So when something like that would happen and have the pull of the media, etc., we would expect that he would come out and say, all right, people, based on the fact that we're discussing Republican form of government, based on the fact that we're talking about decolonization, that word, that situation. But based on that, I'm thinking that he should have come out already and said something. I'm thinking that he should have come out and had a visit to the Blue Lagoon. I'm thinking that we should have had words by now, and I'm hoping that it does happen.
Mm-hmm. All right. There's of course the issue of access to land, and I want to go right there, just generally speaking, in Jamaica, and the extent to which there is a denial, and the fact that we're losing our beaches and losing our rivers. You have a unique take, and also one of the reasons why we're losing our rivers that that is coming from multiple. It's not just the fact that we're being denied access to the rivers or it is being sold off. You said there's another thing that's happening in Jamaica why we're losing our rivers. So I want you to talk to us about what do you think is the reason why at this time Jamaicans, Damian Coombs who was here earlier, talk about these are lands and spaces that our ancestors fought for from time before time, but now there's an invitation to Europeans and to come in to take these spaces from us. What do you think is a reason behind this?
Okay, well, first of all, let's be totally clear. There has always been invitation for these Europeans. Well, let me not say always, but since 1494. Every document, every colonial document that has come out of Jamaica has been a sort of prospectus to say, land for sale, inquire within. Come in and St. Mary's is fertile, rich black soil. Portland has these fantastic rivers, flat plains for sugar, etc., etc. But what we find now is that the sugar is gone and there's a new king. The king is dead, long live the king, and the new king is quote unquote ecotourism. So Jamaica is full of beautiful spaces. The most beautiful spaces are the places that are going to be taken first. We also have to get back to what the government of Jamaica's agenda might be in terms of land, because if we remember the vitriolic outpouring from the Prime Minister when it concerned Maroon speaking about their rights, etc. Of course, Maroon rights are entangled with land, cannot be separated. And then, we have to understand that there are a couple tribal groups here in Jamaica at work. And the history of these people has been ignored, has been subsumed to the point where we're saying, okay, let us just integrate. So we say, out of many, one people, right? Out of many, one people is
the worst thing that could happen to us is this motto, which really didn't even belong to us,
Exactly.
Out of one, many people, but out of many, one people is damn foolish.
Out of many, one people is totally against the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People.
Yes.
So if we were to sit down and have a conversation with the UN, which recently happened, UN CERD, Professor Shepard could give us some real insight on that,
Well, we've had lots of discussions, and she's been here, and we've had the discussions with people. The only person we haven't spoken to yet, I think it's two groups who had gone there. We haven't spoken to the presentation from the Maroon groups, and so we spoke with the Rastafari group, and we also spoke with Jabim.
Right.
So we didn't speak with Advocates Network and with the Maroons group.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But just to say, our listeners have a pretty good idea of some of what happened at CERT, and then what Jamaica has come back to say. One, there are no indigenous people in Jamaica, and they're going to have to talk to my Taino grandmother about that, and and two, that there is no racism in Jamaica. So we know that this is what they have said, and what is egregious also is another thing they have said is that they cannot make access to the sea, to the ocean, open, to all the oceans open, because that would cause an environmental problem. Now, this is ridiculous, but this is what the government of Jamaica is telling the United Nations.
Exactly.
But the people of Jamaica have not risen up against that, though.
No, but the people
of
of Jamaica are not listening to presentations at the United Nations. The people of Jamaica, it's even hard to sometimes get the links to some of these live presentations on the internet.
So it's up to us to carry this back to the people.
Yes,
which is what we have done in this space.
It's vital, and the thing about it is, look, all right, if we're going to say there's no racism in Jamaica, out of many one people is the root of racism in Jamaica. The fact that there should be an all-encompassing identity, and so therefore dissolving land rights, and so therefore dissolving self-governance rights of communities. So there's always talk about the Maroons, for example, right? And there's no acknowledgement of the fact that Nani had a sister, Sekesu, right? And she was the matriarch of the Bongo Nation, who we know as the Kumina people, or Kumina Nation. Those are the Congo people, the exiled people of the Kingdom of Congo. There is no focus on them at all in St. Thomas, right? But we see where land is being gobbled up in St. Thomas right now. Hills are being destroyed, and the material is being carted off to God knows where, right? And so there's no thought about, okay, well then, this was a entire historic group of people who still have language, who still have religion, who still have a creed, and they are being ignored. There's no thought about reparations for these people. Even the reparations movement is tinged with out of many one people, because there's the idea that you're going to give black people, what is black? Each of us have different experiences.
What would be the better thing to say then, the more politically correct thing to say when you talk about reparations?
I think that we need to move towards indigenous, people have a problem with the word tribal, but in light of certain international laws, we need to understand what it really means. A tribe is a voting district, a voting group in Roman law. So in Rome was built on tribes. So that's why you hear that you have a tribal political system in Jamaica today.
But we're good if we say ethnic groups, because we can still say ethnic groups and move on with it. And I understand fine. The point you raised with tribal. I had a good conversation with that with our late brother Tekla McFett. Came in to say, listen, there's nothing wrong with the word. We probably need to embrace the word. We do. To understand ourselves better.
We do.
And so that we look at ethnic group. I said there's ethnic cleansing going on in Jamaica right now.
But certainly.
So we have to understand the ethnicity of it all.
Certainly, because if we look at the Blue Lagoon issue, for example, people don't understand why the Maroons were there, or why there was representation of Maroons. So
why wouldn't they?
So because they don't know the history. So for example, when we were stepping in, you clearly felt the spirit, and you said, we come in the name of Queen Nanny.
Of the Maroons. It is what it is, yes.
But what people don't understand is the Blue Lagoon is said to be, by oral history, the port that Nanny arrived at. Because...
Well, I didn't even know that. You're giving me goose pimple, but I felt Nanny's spirit because remember we walk up quiet,
we came in last.
Yes.
We came in late.
And we were pretty quiet.
Yes.
But as soon as I entered the road...
And you saw the people...
I felt Queen Nanny. And that's why I raised my fist and said, we come in the name of Nanny of the Maroons, because that's what I felt and that's what I said. So I didn't even know that. So Thank you for saying that. But you see, so this takes us, to another part, even though we're talking about access and so on, but I think everything is connected. And that is to say, if we are concerned about liberty, because obviously we are an oppressed people.
Yes.
What does liberty look like in the first place, and how do we achieve liberty? And I want to put unity in that and to say, what does unity look like? Can we achieve unity as different tribes by ourselves in different areas, as different ethnic groups, or coming together as a coalition of all these different areas that we label ourselves as? Let me take a quick break. Now, a minute going up to 8 o'clock, you're inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running African, and my very special guest in the studio this morning, Alex Moore-Minott, a true-born Maroon. And as I said before, he has a BSc with honors in international relations from the University of the West Indies. So what does liberty look like then?
Well, I think we're going to have to backtrack and take this from the root. But before we even go into that, I have mad appreciation for all of the work you do, because I didn't know that you did all of this, engineering, everything you by yourself in here.
Thank you.
So mad respects this. So liberty, let's look at it this way and take it from the root, this emancipation term. Every year we are told that we celebrate emancipation on the 1st of August. But if we look into the Black's Law Dictionary, one of the major meanings of emancipation is a transfer of ownership. Okay? Now, let us take it a step further. And whereas we may not delve down into the nitty-gritty, the accounting, but £20 million was given as reparations to the colonists, the planters, the enslavers for their loss of labor. So I feel like that was payment. I feel like the crown bought the 311,000 people of African and indigenous descent in Jamaica, and they weren't emancipated. Right? Emancipation by the Black's Law Dictionary tells us it's not automatic. It's something that you or your parents have to proclaim. Now, at the end of the day, Jamaica has not made a proclamation of emancipation. Jamaica has not made a proclamation of independence, because none of these things, none of these occurrences are based on us. They're not coming from us. They're
And is that to say, because let us look at those who fought for liberty.
Yes.
Those, so the Sam Sharps and the Chief Taches and those who fought for emancipation. Is that to say that they did not succeed, or is it that the promise of emancipation, as I like to say, has not been fulfilled by those who came after? In other words, so there's an emancipatory process in place that has not been continued, because a paper has been signed off, a proclamation has been made by the Crown,
yes,
and people are content within that, but that emancipation is an activity that has to be ongoing.
Well, they did not fail. What happened is they won all the battles, but we are losing the war. And the problem is our ancestors didn't get a chance to step into the light of law, in terms of the written law, to sit down and have a conceptualization of, okay, what should the documentation look like? What should we be seeing on pen and paper? So many people have not read the Emancipation Proclamation. Rather than having this jump up and down and celebration, I believe that there should be published every 1st of August a reading, because you do have unlettered people in Jamaica, right? Illiteracy, I don't take that one lightly, but there should be a reading of this thing so we really understand, because if that was being read, we'd be ashamed.
And I take the point you're making. And why do you say that?
Because the statements there in terms of be good Christians and attend church.
Yes.
Be good workers and listen to your master, your former masters.
Yes, and the extent to which a crown, that idea of the crown is ingrained within that proclamation.
Yes, and the crown is still guiding with their benevolent hand the process, because these poor, unlettered individuals cannot pick themselves out of the darkness.
And how do you think that this connects back to the wider conversation, or the more narrow conversation actually, that we're having about the denial now of access to land that our foreparents, and I'm talking about foreparents, I'm going way before slavery, right? Because we came before Columbus. And I for my own self, I was not on that in that slavery thing. I was here long before Columbus.
Exactly.
So that. How does that fit back into the conversation we're having about this denial of access now of land that our forefathers fought for?
The emancipation situation is a continuation of a narrative, and it is stitching into our fabric a narrative that, yes, Jamaican people are all descendants of slaves, and that we were dragged here in chains in inhumane conditions, and we are just here on the benevolence of the crown and now on the benevolence of the government of Jamaica.
How do we begin to change that narrative? I agree with you 100%. Yeah. How do we begin to change that narrative?
Well, we have to begin with unity in diversity at the end of the day. We have to realize that we are not one people, that we are people who have had separate existences. We are people who have separate experiences, and once we can appreciate that, then we can unify on our similarities and not on a forced situation to say, yes, we're all Jamaicans, so just live with it. We've been through this, move past it, and we have to go forward. There has to be an appreciation of our history and who we are.
And what part, and talk to us about that appreciation and that history. When we appreciate that history, what are we appreciating?
We are appreciating, so we're coming full circle.
Yes.
And you mentioned what does this, the land struggle and all of these things. We must appreciate the fight. So we're told that Nanny and her people fought for freedom, but they were never slaves. So how could they have fought for freedom if they were never slaves? Nanny and her people, Koja and his people, they were not fighting for freedom. They were fighting for land. They were fighting to continue keeping their land. So Nanny started her war when the British made the declaration in 1722 that the northeast portion of the island was to be settled, and that all free white people were to be given X amount of, I think it's 30 acres per white person. So basically, what people need to appreciate is that Nanny joined the people that were here long before her. And that's the root in the island Lokono, or Arawak, or Taino, as people say now. That is the root there. And the other, as they say, free Negro people, Moors, Congo people, who joined during... And
I think it's very important to make these points, right? Mm-hmm. Because Van Sertima's scholarship shows that. One of the things that Van Sertima has always said is that anything you put on the west coast of Africa, mm-hmm. It's going to float right into the Caribbean.
Right into the Caribbean.
And we were exploring these waters long before Christopher Columbus. That must be known, that must be taught, and that must be said.
Columbus had maps. And Columbus was not the man who was sailing the ship.
Yeah.
He was, remember, they said that Columbus set sail with prisoners. Only criminals were willing to go with him. Where Columbus set sail 1492. He set sail when, they call him Boabdil, was the last king of Granada, the last sultan of Al-Andalus, or what we call Spain, when he was capitulating, when he was surrendering. The only people that were criminals at that time were the so-called Moors, those African people who had ruled Spain for 750 years. So he was guided by indigenous hand, by African hand, people who had always had a trading relationship here.
And he wrote about that too. And this is the thing, is that the information is documented in terms of reading Columbus' diaries. He wrote about who he saw when he came here.
Exactly.
And the description of those who saw when he came here would tell you that they were not just Arawaks or Tainos, as we call them, but they were African people on the island. And that is something that is not taught much. For whatever reason, when we tend to spend a lot of time on slavery. But as I have said in this space many times, our history is not slavery. African history is not slavery. Slavery is an interruption of African history, and that is just the bottom line. So how important is it for people then to go beyond slavery into those who were here before Columbus, African people, who they were, what they did, and how they interacted with the Tainos, or what before. When I was growing up, my great grandmother said she was Arawak and Maroon, and we knew we're all Arawaks and Maroons. That's what we said. It was later on that we hear about Taino. So that. How important is it for us to go forward to our ancient indigenous identity in the teaching of history? And is that even possible in a country where we're told that we all died off?
It is. So if I have the time, let me give an example. I was in a court case in Port Antonio defending our rights. We had been abused by the police. Our vehicle had been taken at gunpoint on February the 3rd, 2018. And we went before a judge, a female, and I was there with my elders, including Major Aarons, who is mentioned in my bio. Yes. He recently passed. Yeah, man. And I know that his daughter is listening right now. Greetings. And yeah, man. Yes. And when we went before the judge, I said, look, our rights precede our rights precede your laws. We are Arawakan people. We are ancient. We've been here before. And she was like, nonsense. And she blew up. And when I tell you blew up. And she was like, that's nonsense. They all died out. Those people were killed by Spanish diseases. And Major Aaron's daughter, Annette, she just put up her hand gently. And when the judge realized that knowledgeable people were ready to speak, she was like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're Eskimo, if you're it doesn't matter what you are. This is Jamaican, these are the laws. And it doesn't matter what you feel, and you're under the law.
All right. So doesn't that take us to republicanism now, and this whole idea of the discussions that are going around? I know you have some serious thinking on that. Let me take a break.
Take it, yeah. Go.
All right, we're back with you inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running African. My very special guest is Alex Moore-Minott. And just before we go back to Alex, we're seeing news out of Israel. Hundreds of thousands of Israelis rallied against the government's judicial plans yesterday, that's last night, in what organizers said was the biggest street protest in Israel's history. Now, Israel is imploding, and it had to implode. It's going to be for a while, but it's going to come right back. But it had to implode, you see, because nobody was looking at Israel and what Israel was doing, not just to the Palestinians, but to the Africans who had gone into Israel. And the situation got even worse when Netanyahu was returned to power. So here we are, so Netanyahu has tried everything that he can try against other people, against Africans, against the Palestinians, and anybody else he wanted to. And now his own people, the Israelis, have risen up against him. The biggest protest ever in Israel's history happened last night, and it's ongoing, it is continuing. We want to see where this ends, but it's going to implode. It has to implode. All right, we're back with you with Alex. So Alex, we're talking about this whole republicanism. This is they're even taken out ads now. I hear the ads running on air. But how do you think that this should work in terms of how should the government engage the public on this?
I was just going to ask you, where is the public engagement? Because I know that they had some online talks. Dr. Clinton Hutton, Marlene Malahoo Ford, couple people had been coming together. And they had been speaking, I think, every month. I stopped seeing the notifications, so I'm not sure if...
Well, I haven't seen any of those. just to say it.
Well, I must tell you that one of the main things they tried to make it clear, especially Professor Hutton, that the Maroons are not sovereign. The Maroons are not sovereign, and they're just a cultural group. But then in the same breath saying that the sovereignty of the nation will be based on the culture of the different groups. Right?
How would you want to see that discussion about the sovereignty of the Maroons? How would you want to see that discussion take place within the context of republicanism?
No offense to anyone else in Jamaica, but I think that we should be first in line in terms of the conversation. Reason being, the Maroon Wars were fought because our land was being stolen. In other words, our land, we were defending our land. In other words, we were here before the British. And so, if that is the case, we need to sit down and understand what were our people fighting about, fighting for, what was happening at that time. And the fact is, look, Nani was not fighting to be a part of anybody's government. Nani was fighting to create a government. Nani was fighting to create a free archipelago of Jamaica. Jamaica is not an island, and our ancestors used all the other smaller islands surrounding Jamaica for trade, etc. Nani was fighting for a situation like Haiti, except the fact that the many people were unwilling to fight, because in slavery you were assured 3 meals a day because you needed food to work. You were assured clothes because you needed to have clothes on your back to go and cut the cane. And you were assured of a place to sleep because you need to rest. You're not a machine, right?
Well, I know that Beverly Creary's research has shown that Queen Nani actually came in for the process of to be part of those who would help to liberate Africans,
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So that is part of the research, that you didn't come in as an enslaved African. So it's important to say that. In a wider context, though, there is between, you said the Maroons should be first. There is between those who identify as Maroons in Jamaica and those who identify as Africans, who there is between that two group the matter of the treaty. And so that whether there is a need to sit down and have this conversation, or there is a need for the Maroons to raise it in a particular space, do you think that this is something that has to happen even within this process, as we talk about of looking at the Constitution, as we talk about republicanism, that there has to be that conversation
I think personally that one of the first moves that needs to be made is reconciliation between the Maroons and the people of Jamaica overall, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. And I think that there is a lot of pull for the Maroons to apologize. But the issue with that is that to apologize for the actions of people that were done 300 years ago is a bit technical, right? Because you don't really know what the circumstances were. But whatever they may be, we're all here together now. and we need to start.
And there might be a misunderstanding on the part of those who identify as Maroons also in terms of what people are calling for when they say apologize. Because
probably.
Because that apology, I personally think there needs to be a conversation on this. When I say apologize, even in this space, I'm not even talking about the extent to which you're going there, because yes, you're right. But there is another thing that happened that we have to talk about. It's commensality. So we have to sit down and talk a little bit about these issues, I think. And this is one of the reasons why I asked you up front earlier, what does unity look like, and how do we unite in the different tribes, in the different ethnic groups? How do we begin to unite?
Well, I think we need to look at the fact that there was a call for the decolonization of all previously colonized nations. And and this was by the UN. And in decolonization, we need to realize that our tribal beginnings or tribal roots had their own means of self-governance based on an indigenous cosmovision, an indigenous worldview. And it's not all about the nation-state system where you must have a prime minister and you must wear a suit and it must be this and that. For example, Tonga and other Pacific nations still maintain chieftaincy. And those chiefs still own the land and still have to come together for discussion.
Yes, and I mean, we see that this is what happens on the continent of Africa, especially West Africa in particular.
Exactly.
In Ghana, I mean, you go now, as Sister Pia myself, we're heading to Ghana soon. You go to Kumasi first of all, and you go where the chiefs are and so on.
Kumasi is still ruled by the Asante Hene.
Yeah, so this is I think these are conversations that we need to have among ourselves, you know.
Yes.
Those who are for liberation.
Correct.
I think we have to move away from what them a plan, one way or the other.
I think that in decolonization, we need to get rid of the crown, but we need to replace it with an indigenous crown or a house of chiefs where people, not just the Maroons, but the Bongo people, the Kumina people, for example, all of these different groups that make a Jamaican fabric.
We the Tainos and the Arawaks who are still alive. Look here, nobody not take that from me, you know. The Babsy, the Minister of Culture, and Lalita, them they could go to the UN till they die. I really honestly myself don't put much score on the United Nations. I must just say that right off the top. I understand that they do have influence, but for me, I think we're going to have to liberate ourselves also from the United Nations because they themselves are part of that system, that oppressive system that seek to keep indigenous communities and diasporic communities, African diasporic communities, in their places. And you can look at the ganja laws, for example.
Oh boy.
Whether or not ganja is legal or is not legal, but then what comes out of the United Nations dictates and determines that even though Canada has legalized, Jamaica will not be able to legalize as long as the United Nations keep the stance that they're keeping. So we have to connect everything, I think, and withdraw ourselves from some of these agencies. Even
then, the UN was still saying to Minister Grange, what are you saying? Because her concept is that there are no indigenous people in Jamaica. There are only Jamaican people practicing indigenous culture, which is lunacy. And if we're going to speak about land rights, it's all coming back from that Arawakan root, wherein the Maroons have land rights because some of their parents were Arawak people, were island Lokono people, right? They have that place they fought over. Nani ended up in the fight for where is now called Portland and St. Thomas, the East, because these were ancient habitations. These were trading posts that our people had been trading from with the East in terms of with Haiti, in terms of with now the Lucayos that they now call Bahamas, Kyrie, which they now call Trinidad. Euromain, which they now call St. Vincent, our people were always trading, and even with Africans, with so-called Moorish traders, with Congo, Kingdom of Congo traders, etc. We were always, and the British had a problem with that.
Of course. And we cannot separate the history. We cannot just take out slavery and study slavery without understanding what was happening in Europe at the time, understanding what was happening in Latin America at the time, in the Americas at the time, in the Caribbean at the time. We have to be able to, in our minds, connect all the bits and pieces to understand who we are. We are not just children of the enslaved. We came before Columbus, and this is a point that we need to
And the enslaved had parents.
And the enslaved had parents. Also, we integrated with the Tainos or the Arawaks who were on the land, and here we are. So nobody tell us that the Tainos have, they were killed out by Spanish diseases. That is a misinformation that they put out there to keep us down and to give away the land from underway, and to say that there are no indigenous people in Jamaica. My brother, we only have 4 minutes now. Well, 3 minutes, and. A long time an interview not go so fast. It really go fast. But I'm inviting you back.
Yeah.
Because we want to now take apart this whole Constitution thing and the Republican thing, and to look at what we are saying. So some of this we put out there in the public. So I invite you back to have that discussion. But I'm giving you the last word as then, how do we move from here as a people? How do we move from here now in unity, not uniformity?
Action, education, re-education. So, for example, the Maroons are always called squatters. But here I have Nani's land patent document. And when it even comes on to the Rio Grande issue,
yes.
This document says, together with all edifices, trees, woods, underwoods, ways, waters, water courses, rents, profits continue. So the Rio Grande is one of our water courses. So in terms of even the mining, in terms of even the permission licensing, the government of Jamaica did not have the jurisdiction or they didn't own the river. We own it.
They don't own no river.
No.
That they're still giving away, and you have a documentation for that. I'm very happy for that.
So it's re-education.
Yes.
That's how we must go forward. We have to go forward with an understanding of who we are, where we're coming from, in order to know where we're going.
And we have to put ourselves in charge of ourselves.
Exactly.
Because what we've been doing is depending on them to guide us. But the more, you see, when knowledge increase and when knowing increase, then we can't say we didn't know, This is where we have to rise to the occasion.
Exactly.
Yes, my brother, I look forward to working with you.
Yes, sister. Yes, indeed.
Give thanks. Alex Moore-Minott is a brother that you all should be listening to closely. He'll be in this space many, many times. We're going to work with each other, many differences.
And we need to bring in the Granny and the cultural group as well.
Of course. Anytime you're ready. But the point I want to underscore is that we all have many, many differences. Nobody know. If we all agreed on everything, then what kind of world this would be?
Boring.
So we okay with the differences. What we agree on much more than the differences that we have, and sometimes the differences is only to make us better.
Exactly.
You understand? So this is another point that we have to make in this space. Hey, thank you, Alex.
You're welcome.
As usual, my brother.
Thank you, sister.
Keep the fire burning.
Yeah,
all right, Alex Moore-Minott there. Listen to the brother. Some serious points being made here. I hope you listen between the lines and over the lines and in between the lines to what he said this morning, to the points he raised this morning in this space. Because it's going to come a time, and I think the time is now. We've been saying this, our backs are already against the wall. And, I many years ago, I interviewed the author of the book, We Will Shoot Back. We Will Shoot Back. Get that book, because that's where we are now. Our backs against the wall. We will fight back. We're going to have to. Because we can't just stand up and depend on them to change. We are going to have to be the change that we want to see. And another thing that I keep saying in this space, we have to stop depending on waiting for a leader. We have to lead from where we are. Leaderfulness is the name of the game. We have to lead from where we are. Leaderfulness in the space.